have always had a complicated relationship with my parents. They are traditional Asian immigrants who moved to America when my mom was pregnant with my older brother James, 32M. Growing up in a traditional household wasn't easy. From a young age, my parents drilled into us the importance of preserving our cultural heritage, maintaining family honor, and most importantly, keeping our bloodline pure. My father built his business from scratch after moving here. He worked long hours at multiple jobs, saved every penny, and eventually started a small import-export company that grew significantly over the years. My brother James followed in his footsteps, joining the business right after college. I, on the other hand, chose a different path and became a software engineer, which my parents reluctantly accepted since it was at least a respectable profession. Growing up, my parents always emphasized how important it was to marry someone from a good family. They constantly told stories about our ancestors and how our bloodline could be traced back several generations. They were proud of knowing every detail about our family history and expected us to maintain those standards. 3 years ago, I met Sarah, 27F, at a tech conference where we were both speakers. She was brilliant, passionate about her work, and had the kind of warmth that made everyone around her feel comfortable. We started dating after running into each other at several industry events. Sarah was different from anyone I'd ever met. She understood my passion for technology, supported my career choices, and made me laugh like no one else could. Sarah was adopted at birth by a loving couple who couldn't have children of their own. Her adoptive parents gave her every opportunity in life, supported her education, and raised her to be confident and independent. She never felt less loved because she was adopted. If anything, it made her appreciate her parents more for choosing her. For the first year of our relationship, I kept Sarah separate from my family life. I had seen how my parents reacted to my brother's previous girlfriends who didn't meet their standards, and I wanted to protect Sarah from that judgment. However, after a year of dating and talking about moving in together, I knew I had to introduce her to them. I tried to prepare my parents before the dinner. I told them about Sarah's achievements, her kind nature, and her family values. I also mentioned that she was adopted, hoping they would focus on who she was as a person rather than her background. Looking back, I was naive to think they would change their deeply ingrained beliefs. The dinner was worse than I could have imagined. My parents barely acknowledged Sarah's presence. When she tried to talk about her work in artificial intelligence, my mother interrupted to ask about her real parents. When Sarah explained she was adopted, the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. My father stopped eating and just stared at his plate, while my mother started asking invasive questions about her biological parents. Sarah handled the situation with grace, explaining that she had a wonderful family who chose her and loved her unconditionally. But my mother kept pushing, asking if she had ever tried to find her real family because blood is thicker than water. When Sarah mentioned that she had no interest in finding her biological parents, my mother gasped as if Sarah had said something offensive. After Sarah left, my parents launched into a tirade about how I was trying to ruin our family's reputation. My mother cried about how she couldn't believe her son would date someone with unknown blood. My father talked about how Sarah could have bad genes that would affect their grandchildren. They brought up cousins and family friends with suitable daughters, showing me photos and suggesting I meet them instead. Over the next few months, the pressure became unbearable. My parents called multiple times daily, sent messages about potential matches from good families, and even showed up at my workplace to introduce me to girls they approved of. My mother would cry on the phone, saying I was killing her by choosing Sarah over family. My father threatened to disown me, saying I was disrespecting generations of ancestors by considering marriage with someone of questionable origins. My brother James, who I had hoped would support me, sided with our parents. He started sending me articles about adopted children having psychological issues and identity problems. He claimed he was looking out for me, saying that marrying Sarah would be a mistake because we couldn't be sure about her genetic background. When Sarah and I moved in together 6 months ago, things escalated. My parents showed up unannounced one Sunday morning with a girl named Lisa, whose family they had known for years. They walked into our apartment as if Sarah wasn't even there, introducing Lisa as someone who would make a perfect wife. They talked about Lisa's family history, her pure bloodline, and her parents' wealth, all while Sarah was standing right there in our kitchen. Sarah was hurt but tried to be understanding of my family's cultural beliefs. She suggested we could try family counseling or find ways to help my parents understand that family isn't just about blood. But my parents refused to even consider it, saying that therapy was a Western concept that had no place in our culture. Last month, my parents delivered their final ultimatum. They said I had 1 week to end things with Sarah, or they would cut all ties with me. They threatened to remove me from the family registry, a symbolic but significant gesture in our culture. Even though I was financially independent, the thought of losing my entire family and cultural identity terrified me. In a moment of weakness that I'll always regret, I broke up with Sarah. I couldn't even give her the real reason, instead making up excuses about cultural differences and incompatibility. Sarah was blindsided. She kept asking what had changed, what she had done wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth about my parents' ultimatum. Yesterday changed everything. I ran into Sarah's adoptive mother, Mrs. Chen, at the local grocery store. Instead of avoiding me, she confronted me directly. She showed me anonymous letters that had been sent to Sarah's workplace, suggesting she was unstable and untrustworthy because of her unknown background. There were emails sent to her adoptive parents, implying that Sarah was a gold digger trying to marry into our family for money. The letters were clearly written by someone who knew intimate details about our relationship and my family's beliefs. When I saw the pain and anger in Mrs. Chen's eyes, I felt disgusted with myself for letting my parents control me this way. I went straight home and confronted my parents. Instead of denying it, they defended their actions. My mother said they had to protect the family name from being tainted. My father claimed they did it out of love, to prevent me from making a huge mistake. My brother James backed them up, saying I should be grateful they cared enough to intervene. That was the last straw. I packed some clothes and left. I'm writing this from a hotel room, trying to figure out what to do next. My phone is filled with messages from relatives, some calling me ungrateful, others saying I'm overreacting and should apologize to my parents. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm finally seeing my family for who they really are. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my last post. First, I want to thank everyone who commented and shared their own experiences. Your support gave me the strength to take action instead of hiding in that hotel room feeling sorry for myself. After reading hundreds of comments supporting my decision to leave, I finally gained the courage to reach out to Sarah. I sent her a text asking if we could meet somewhere neutral to talk. Initially, she didn't respond, which I completely understood given how badly I had hurt her. 3 days later, she agreed to meet at a coffee shop near her workplace. The moment I saw Sarah walk in, I realized how much I had messed up. She had lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing the blue sweater I had given her for her birthday last year, which made everything hurt even more. She sat down across from me, her face showing a mix of anger and exhaustion. I started by apologizing for my cowardice and not telling her the truth about why I ended our relationship. I explained everything about my parents' ultimatum and their obsession with bloodlines and family heritage. As I began telling her about the anonymous letters, she suddenly raised her hand to stop me. Sarah pulled out her laptop and showed me something that turned my world upside down. She had received an anonymous email a week ago from someone claiming to be an employee at my family's company. The email contained screenshots of conversations and email exchanges that proved my brother James had been the mastermind behind everything. The evidence was overwhelming. There were emails from James to various employees, instructing them to help him gather information about Sarah's workplace and her adoptive parents. He had created multiple fake email accounts to send those anonymous letters. There were even conversations between James and a private investigator he had hired to look into Sarah's background. But what really made me sick was finding drafts of emails where James had carefully crafted messages to manipulate our parents' prejudices. He had researched articles about adoption and genetic disorders, specifically choosing the ones that would trigger our parents' fears about bloodlines and family heritage. He had been feeding them these articles and stories for months, knowing exactly which cultural buttons to push. Sarah explained that after our breakup, she had thrown herself into work to cope with the pain. One evening, while working late, she received that anonymous email. The sender felt guilty after discovering James's true motives and decided to expose him. As I read through everything, memories started flooding back. 5 years ago, when I was dating Emma during college, James had suddenly become very interested in my relationship. He started spending more time with our parents, having private conversations that would stop when I entered the room. Shortly after, our parents began pressuring me to break up with Emma, citing similar concerns about her family background not being good enough. I had always found it strange how they suddenly turned against Emma, but I never connected the dots until now. With shaking hands, I pulled up my phone and showed Sarah the dozens of messages James had sent me over the past year, all expressing concern about my relationship with her. Each message now read like a calculated move in his game to drive us apart. Sarah then revealed something else. The job offer she had recently received came right after one of James's anonymous letters reached her current employer. She suspects James might have orchestrated this too, trying to get her to leave the city. I left the coffee shop and drove straight to my parents' house. James was there, discussing business with our father in his home office. Without warning, I connected my phone to the office TV and played the email screenshots Sarah had shown me. James's face went pale. Instead of denying anything, James calmly explained his reasoning. He said that as the eldest son, he had a responsibility to protect the family business. He was worried that if I married Sarah, I would want an equal share in the company. According to him, having me marry someone from an unknown background would make it harder for him to justify keeping full control of the business. What hurt most was watching our parents' reaction. Even after seeing clear evidence of James's manipulation, they focused on the fact that these emails had been stolen and shared without permission. My mother started crying about how their private family matters were now exposed. My father was more concerned about potential damage to the company's reputation than the fact that his son had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to sabotage his brother's happiness. That's when James smirked and said something I'll never forget: "At least I got the job done. Sarah's gone, and the company stays where it belongs." He didn't show an ounce of remorse. In his mind, he had done nothing wrong because he was protecting his inheritance. I've moved out of the hotel and into a small apartment. My parents have been calling constantly, not to apologize, but to convince me to understand James's position. They say that as the eldest son, he was right to be concerned about the family business, even if his methods were wrong. Some relatives have suggested I should be grateful that James cares enough about the family's future to take such measures. I've blocked James's number and all his email addresses. I'm meeting with a lawyer next week to understand my rights regarding the family business, not because I want the money, but because I need to know if there are other lies I've been fed over the years. Sarah and I have been texting daily since our coffee shop meeting. We're both processing everything that happened, and while we're not back together, we're at least talking again. She's considering accepting that job offer in another city, and honestly, I don't blame her for wanting to get away from all this drama. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and the situation has become even more complicated. After discovering James's manipulation, I couldn't help but wonder what else he might have lied about. I started digging into our family business history, and what I found shocked me to my core. Last week, I visited our old family home where my grandfather used to live. The house had been empty since he passed away 5 years ago, with most of his belongings packed away in the attic. My parents never sold the house, claiming grandfather wanted it preserved as a family memorial. While going through boxes of old documents, I found grandfather's original will, dated just 3 months before his death. The will clearly stated that the family business was to be divided equally between James and me. There were also detailed letters grandfather had written to both of us, explaining his decision. He believed that both his grandsons deserved an equal share because we each had different strengths that could benefit the company. In grandfather's letter to me, he specifically mentioned how proud he was of my technical knowledge and believed my background in software engineering could help modernize the family business. He had actually planned for me to handle the company's technological expansion while James managed the traditional operations. This discovery hit me hard. For years, James and my parents had told me that grandfather changed his mind before passing away, supposedly deciding that only the eldest son should inherit the business to maintain traditional values. They claimed there was a new will, but no one ever showed it to me. I never questioned this because in our culture, it's common for the eldest son to inherit everything. I took the documents to grandfather's old lawyer, who confirmed their authenticity. He seemed surprised when I mentioned a second will, saying he was never asked to prepare one. He also revealed something disturbing. After grandfather's death, James had visited his office multiple times, asking about the possibility of adjusting inheritance documents. The lawyer had refused. When I confronted my parents with this evidence, their reaction was both predictable and disappointing. Instead of being outraged at James's deception, they tried to justify it. My mother said that even if grandfather wanted to split the business, it was better for it to remain under single leadership. My father argued that as the eldest son, James was more qualified to run the company anyway. James's response was even more infuriating. He said he did what was necessary to protect the business from being diluted by split ownership. According to him, I wasn't suited for a leadership role because I had chosen a different career path. He conveniently ignored the fact that he had actively worked to keep me away from the company all these years. In the midst of all this family drama, Sarah reached out to me with news. The job offer she received was from a major tech company in Seattle, offering her a leadership position in their AI department. When she told me about it, I realized that despite everything that had happened, my feelings for her hadn't changed. We've been talking more frequently now, not just about the family situation but about everything. Sarah shared how the whole experience made her appreciate her adoptive parents even more. They supported her through the breakup and stood by her when those anonymous letters arrived at her workplace. Unlike my family, they showed what true family love looks like, unconditional and accepting. Our conversations have helped me see how toxic my family's obsession with blood ties and tradition really is. Here was Sarah, who had no biological connection to her parents, receiving more genuine love and support than I ever got from my blood family. The irony isn't lost on me. My parents and James were so worried about Sarah's unknown background potentially harming our family, when they were the ones causing all the damage. They were so focused on preserving what they saw as our family's honor that they didn't realize they were destroying it themselves through their lies and manipulation. I'm still processing the fact that not only did James sabotage my relationship, but he also stole what grandfather had intended for me. The business aspect isn't even about the money, it's about the years of deception and the realization that my own family saw me as a threat to be managed rather than a son to be loved. Update 3 months have passed since my original post, and a lot has changed. After finding grandfather's original will, I consulted with 2 different lawyers about my legal rights. They confirmed that I had a strong case against James for inheritance fraud. Last month, I officially filed a lawsuit to contest the current ownership of the family business. The fallout was immediate and intense. James tried to damage control by offering me a 20% share of the company if I dropped the lawsuit. When I refused, he started spreading rumors within our extended family about how I was trying to destroy our parents' legacy. Some relatives even claimed I was being manipulated by Sarah and her family into turning against my own blood. My parents' reaction was exactly what I expected. My mother called crying, saying I was killing her by bringing shame to the family. My father threatened to tell everyone in our community about how I was betraying Asian values by siding with my adopted girlfriend over my own brother. The irony of them worrying about family reputation while defending James's fraud wasn't lost on me. Sarah accepted the job offer in Seattle, and after much thought, I decided to move there too. I already work remotely for my tech company, so the relocation wasn't difficult. We're taking things slow, rebuilding our relationship with better boundaries and more honest communication. Her parents have been surprisingly supportive, understanding that we needed time to heal from everything that happened. Last week, James made one final attempt to resolve things privately. He invited me to our childhood home, where he, my parents, and several elderly relatives were waiting. They had prepared a whole speech about family unity and tradition. James offered to publicly apologize for the anonymous letters if I dropped the lawsuit. My parents promised to accept Sarah if I agreed to sign away my rights to the business. I declined their offer. I told them this wasn't about money or revenge, it was about years of manipulation and lies. James didn't just try to destroy my relationship, he actively worked to keep me away from something grandfather wanted me to have. My parents' willingness to overlook his deception while continuing to judge Sarah based on her adoption status showed me their true priorities. The lawsuit is proceeding, and my lawyers are confident about the outcome. Several employees from the company have come forward with evidence of James's tampering with business documents after grandfather's death. It turns out I wasn't the only one he had deceived over the years. I've maintained my decision to stay no contact with my family. My parents still send messages through relatives, alternating between guilt trips and anger about how I'm disrespecting our culture. James tried reaching out through LinkedIn, probably worried about how the lawsuit would affect his business reputation, but I blocked him there too. Sarah and I moved to Seattle last week. We're both focusing on our careers and slowly rebuilding what my family tried to destroy. Her adoptive parents helped us find an apartment, showing me what real family support looks like. They never once judged me for my family's actions or for initially breaking up with Sarah. The whole experience taught me that family isn't about blood or genetics or maintaining some ancient lineage. It's about people who support you, respect you, and love you unconditionally. Sometimes those people aren't the ones you're born to, but the ones you choose, and who choose you back. As for the lawsuit, I'll update if anything significant happens. But honestly, whether I win or lose, I already have what's most important, my freedom from toxic family dynamics and a chance to build a life based on love rather than obligation.